All right. Here we are, early in the morning. Early in the morning on a Thursday. I am back in New York, and we both share a love and history with New York. I'm here with Chris Hunter once again, and we are talking about Bitcoin Beach Wallet, which is the largest Bitcoin community bank in the world. Right?
Exactly.
That is what Bitcoin Beach Wallet is. This is what we're going to be going into again and talking about this morning, the bigger opportunity, the rebrand, everything that he's been hard at work doing for the past year. We've had a lot of firsts lately in the Lightning Ventures fold, and this is an exciting first because this is our first follow-on investment that we are able to invest again in. We invested through our fund last year around this time. I believe it closed around in December last year. And then we had our syndicate. And now we have the opportunity to invest again. So that's pretty exciting for us that we're able to double down on an incredible company with blue skies ahead. So, Chris Hunter, how are you this morning?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for asking.
All right. And I want to get right into it. And I don't know if people are going to listen to us ramble, but listen, the conference in El Salvador was killer, adopting Bitcoin. I know we had some fun on that panel, which you did the best job moderating.
We closed the conference down with a bang. You, me, and Max Webster is a fantastic session. Final
We,
session.
clo- we closed it down with a bang. Chris and I, we're like the Abbott and Costello. You know, he's often very serious, and I'm often way too silly. So we balance each other out. All right, so let's dig right in. Um, you're back again, okay? And Bitcoin Beach Wallet has a major facelift, right? There's been a major rebrand. If you've been to the website, right, which is bbw.sv, you've probably noticed that it's gotten completely rebuilt. Looks wonderful, super slick, new logo, and just worlds above the branding and marketing from the early roots and what's happened since 2020. So what else is going on?
Sure. Well, there's a lot. I mean, picking up on what you just shared, the Bitcoin Beach Wallet, just to provide some context here, we launched it in late 2020, more than 2 years ago. And as you alluded to, as a grassroots project. And, we've since spun it out to be its own company. And, the long-term mission and vision here is to make this into a world-class financial services platform for many people to use. And you're seeing, a bit of that expressed there in the rebranding. And so, we took this proof of concept that was incubated by Galoy, a software company, and spun it out in December of last year, 12 months ago. And what we've been doing this calendar year is really putting in place the foundational pieces to make this into a real world-class business, right? So that means hiring, great team members, local executives in El Salvador, registering with the proper authorities, capitalizing the business, et cetera, et cetera. So, that gives you a bit of a flavor, but we can obviously get into the details here.
Yes, for sure. And what I was alluding to was I was alluding to really the main rebrand, right? So everyone here is in our syndicate, right, which is proprietary and confidential, and everyone is accredited and all of that. But if it's been leaked, right, when is this rebrand happening? And
Sure.
can you go into a little bit about that?
Yeah, so there's a couple elements here. Number one, we're certainly very proud of, the Bitcoin Beach project, the Bitcoin Beach wallet that we've created in support of it, right? And, on one hand, there's so much goodwill associated with the Bitcoin Beach wallet name and brand that we've created, and, the new logo that, has been very well received. But on the other hand, what we've created is much more than a wallet, right? There is the wallet, which is a great product, but we've got a whole banking solution here. And so we want to communicate, number one, to the world that, there's much more to the company than just the wallet itself. And number two, we also want to communicate to the world that, you know, we are building a world-class financial services platform here that will be focused on El Salvador in the near term, but will certainly spread to other jurisdictions, right? And so we plan sometime early next year, early 2023, to rebrand the company, right? And then still keep the Bitcoin Beach wallet name itself for the core product, which is the mobile wallet on Google and iOS that people have come to know and love.
Okay, can I give a little tease here of this? Is this a or are we not talking about that?
Have at it. So, I mean, we're, you know, full disclosure for everybody in the syndicate here, you know, right now, you know, we're thinking Badge is the name for the company. You know, maybe we'll do some focus group testing, maybe we'll get some feedback, maybe, you know, there is some possibility we'll choose a different name in terms of what we publicly unveil. But, you know, what we want to signal is we have every intention to rebrand the company under a different name while still keeping the Bitcoin Beach wallet name for the core product.
So I love the rebrand, okay, and I love what's happened in the past year with marketing and with the website and the way that this is presented. Before it was much more cloudy. And you know, you have like a crazy lofty goal here. There's two of them actually, and that is the number one Bitcoin bank in Latin America, which is a very lofty goal. And it's the number one bank in El Salvador by 2030, right? Which is kind of where it was born. So as far as the greater opportunity here in terms of more of a neobank, you know, Bitcoin first, why the Latin American expansion?
Sure. I mean, obviously, El Salvador has been, you know, a fantastic place for us to start and experiment in a way that, you know, for example, we couldn't have done in the US, just given the regulatory burden in the US. And so, you know, we certainly are focused on El Salvador for the near term and want to be the number one solution in country for financial services for people and merchants, full stop, within El Salvador. But the reality is El Salvador is a relatively small market, right? Less than 7 million people. And so, you know, once we, you know, introduce some new products in El Salvador in 2023 and, you know, kind of find our footing with those new products, we want to quickly expand into other countries in the region. You know, probably the second country we will enter is actually Mexico. You know, it might seem logical to enter neighboring countries or, you know, countries that are a little bit closer like Costa Rica, Guatemala, Honduras, and we will enter those markets, but there's such a fantastic opportunity in Mexico with, you know, specific areas within Mexico that we're excited about. So, you know, I would expect that to come in 2024. And then, you know, if we're meeting with success in terms of both providing good product for people and real solutions in these different jurisdictions, there's no reason why we can't grow into some of the other countries that are shown here on the slide.
So since we're talking about the expansion, I'm going to go straight to a question that somebody emailed, and that is basically, are you entering Latin America because of future adoption rumors there, or just because it's the next logical geographic expansion to capture remittances, etc.? And if you know, Chris had a great presentation opening keynote in at Adopting Bitcoin just a few weeks ago, basically saying that it's doesn't matter. You know what I mean? It's not about the next country that does it. But go ahead, Chris. What do you think?
Sure. Yeah. Just to clarify your question, when you say adoption, I presume you're meaning adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender in another country.
Yeah. You know, Guatemala on the border. I don't know if, you know, Bitcoin Beach Wallet is the preferred wallet in El Salvador. I know that you guys have a good relationship with the president there, and you know, I just didn't know, you know, why.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you touched on a lot of things there, but let's come back to this question of adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender in other countries beyond El Salvador. And as you mentioned, you know, I touched on this. This was the main focus of my opening keynote at the Adopting Bitcoin conference. You know, just to be a bit pithy about it, I don't think it matters. And in fact, it may well be a distraction, to put it politely. and the reality is, there's just to be a bit forward about things, there's a cabal globally that controls the existing banking sector and media and government sector. And for the most part, the people who control the existing institutions have no interest in seeing Bitcoin succeed, right? And I think my personal point of view is Bitcoin succeeds over the long term through more of a grassroots bottom up approach than it does by asking permission for certain regulatory authorities in different jurisdictions to give us approval. And so, I'm not focused on, which country is going to come next in terms of approving Bitcoin as legal tender. We're focused on providing real solutions for people every day, right? And just to extend the thought, you see that in El Salvador. The reality is not many people in El Salvador are using Bitcoin in country because the government said it's legal tender or because the government provided them a default option with the Chivo wallet, right? The people who are using Bitcoin in country are using solutions like ours, the Bitcoin Beach wallet, because it provides a real solution either for individuals or merchants who simply never had access to financial services before. And now all of a sudden they're in this digital world and it provides real value and utility. And they're saying, wow, okay, now I'll use this because it just works. And it offers me something I didn't have before, or it offers me something that's better, faster, cheaper.
So this is a very lofty goal. Okay. This is a big opportunity here. And I want everyone to realize, okay, clearly that this is a bank. Okay. And we have a question here. I have a question here about the Bitcoin service provider and the regulation with the El Salvadorian Central Bank. Okay. And I want to get to that, but this is the goal. Okay. And I just want everyone to get that, because that seemed to be the hang up before. Seems to be a lot of what people are coming back with is they don't understand the real opportunity here. Okay.
Can we go back to the slide that you just had? So, to pick up on this, right? Keep in mind, banking sector in El Salvador today is roughly a $2 billion market cap. The banking sector in El Salvador is only serving 30% of the people, right? And so there's not just, hey, can we become the number one bank in El Salvador and have a very large valuation, right? But we can also grow the pie, right? Because right now, most of the people that we're serving in El Salvador are not served by the names you see on this slide, right? They're not served by the existing banking sector, right? So there's an opportunity to both create a bigger market, even just within El Salvador, and capture a large portion of that and create something that's very valuable. And then picking up on the prior point, we can expand into other jurisdictions, and this can become a very exciting story in terms of the value creation for shareholders over time.
And you're the only financial bank in El Salvador that is like leading the charge with Bitcoin, right? I mean, these other top 5 banks, I think that they're publicly traded, are they working with Bitcoin? What are they doing?
No, I mean, the reality is, certainly none of these banks offer any Bitcoin services whatsoever. And in fact, if you're on Bitcoin Twitter, there's a lot of rah-rah about El Salvador, and much of it's deserved. But, the reality is, one point I made before, people aren't using Bitcoin in El Salvador just because the government made it legal tender, right? It hasn't changed the dynamic there. Second thing is, these banks are not even friendly to businesses like ours, even in terms of opening a bank account, right? And so, we formally took the proof of concept and made it into its own company and spun it out of Galoy a year ago. And for a year, we've been trying to open a corporate bank account with some of the names here, and we still don't have full banking access, even after 12 months of effort. The insight there is the banks, behind closed doors are not very friendly to encouraging even native Bitcoin service providers like our own company to do business in country. It's a real challenge, but that's also part of the opportunity and what we're trying to bring forward in terms of our solutions here. Bring forward an alternative system to be more clear about it.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to jump to this question that we had here. Basically, what is a Bitcoin service provider regulated with the El Salvador Central Bank? What is that? Are you the only one? Are you the only one in El Salvador, or are there who else are your peers in this category with this license?
Sure. So, there was, it was in June of 21 when President Bukele got up and said Bitcoin would become legal tender, September 7th of that year, last year, when all these new laws actually went into full force and effect. And so there's this new type of entity, Bitcoin service provider, that can register with the central bank and other authorities in country. We are not the only one. There's some number of dozens in country. The reality is there's probably something that feels like five or six that are meaningfully active, and I prefer not to name names of other companies. So, we're certainly not the only one in country. We're certainly one of the more prominent Bitcoin services provider in country. And putting aside the Chivo wallet, I'm pretty confident, we're the most widely used wallet and Bitcoin service provider that's registered in the country.
Yeah, the Chivo wallet, without getting too much into the weeds here, boy, is really hit or miss. You go to one merchant there in El Salvador and he's accepting Lightning. You go to another one and it's on chain and it's like 18 clicks deep in the thing for him to do it. It's really hit or miss. I did use an ATM there. I withdrew $100. I had to wait for one on-chain confirmation. I bumped the fee to get in the next block, and it was cool walking away from that machine with $100. But there's a lot to be desired with the Chibo from a merchant perspective. So Bitcoin Beach Wallet, 100,000 plus downloads, and by far the most visibility in El Salvador with signage. Okay. Whether it was around the conference, whether it was in El Zante, whether it was a window sticker in a little bodega type of shop, lot of Bitcoin Beach Wallet merchants there. And that was really cool to see. So it made it as one of the leading finance apps in El Salvador. I don't know how tough that is, but congratulations on that. And really, like, the future monetization, okay, because right now the bulk of it is from on-chain fees. So when you talk about the bill pay merchants tools, and I wanted to do a catch up on the API, when do you think some of these other revenue streams are going to be turned on?
Sure. I mean, maybe we can take a bit. I mean, you touch on a lot of great points there as well. Maybe we could just take a half step back. There's a couple slides in the deck that might be worth highlighting. Maybe we could just start with the product roadmap slide, if I might ask you to pull that up. There we go. And so, as mentioned before, the core product is the wallet itself. We've introduced this new StableStats feature, which gives people dollar certainty, right? We all think in fiat terms, for better or for worse, that's not going to change anytime soon. And so we can come back to the StableStats feature, but this gives people a sense of some of the new products that we want to introduce in the market as well. You mentioned revenue. What we've done in recent months is really just put the business on kind of a good foundation to grow, right? So we've hired the key executives in country. As you mentioned, with some of the signage, we started some real marketing efforts to promote the business in various ways in country. And we haven't had a focus yet in terms of generating revenue. That said, we're still already generating real healthy revenue for the business, both in terms of on-chain fees, as well as through the StableStats feature, where we charge a small spread, I should say, every time people convert from Bitcoin to dollars or dollars back to Bitcoin. Beyond that, as we look to 2023, we want to introduce a couple more things. Number one is on the merchant side, we're already offering merchant point of sale solutions. We're going to be enhancing those solutions going forward. We currently do not charge merchants any fees for that. We will, at some point next year, turn on a 1% fee for all transactions there. So that'll be a meaningful source of revenue on top of the on-chain fees and the StableSat spread that we charge. Then we'll introduce a bill pay feature, which will make it easy to pay your mobile phone bill or your internet bill or your monthly water bill. So we'll partner with the vendor who's providing those services, and just by, within the app, sitting on your sofa, make it cheap and easy and convenient to pay your bills directly there. And then, the BBW API is a huge opportunity for us to generate more revenue as well, where we'll partner with larger companies, typically multinationals, where they'll have large number of consumers using their existing app and will enable Bitcoin purchases in that company's existing app riding on top of our API, and that can generate massive amounts of revenue as well. So that gives people a sense of the near-term product roadmap in terms of new things we wanted to introduce.
Okay, and as usual, you slugged through a bunch of the questions that I had here to get to. So let me just start crossing them off this list here. So the question was, will StableStats ever generate any revenue, or is this just a feature that was built for the customers? I'm going to try and link to the Arvind StableStats presentation from Adopting Bitcoin. But to answer this question, you heard Chris say that there is a small spread, and this is a revenue generating feature. Okay, so the API from last year to this year, has it been successful? And do you have any updates on the API? And is that what, like at the conference, that where everything that was being paid in Bitcoin was being displayed on that screen, like with at the Bitcoin Beach wallet vendor booth? Okay. And then like the partnership, right? The large scale partnership that you're closing in that area. I don't want to say it. I'll let you say it if it can be said. Is that an example of the API being used, or is that just a kind of a sales exclusive partnership?
Sure. Yeah, a couple great points there. So, it's the same tech stack that's provided by Galoy, right? The software company, who's obviously our key partner, enabling everything we do at PBW. The API, just to be clear, has not been used by any clients just yet. You can go to, I think it's slide 14. It might be the next slide in the deck. And we can talk about the first partner who's going to be using our API. So we've signed a contract with Hugo. The people watching this might not be familiar with Hugo, but Hugo's probably the most important and successful fintech company in Central America, full stop. They're a super app. It's effectively DoorDash plus other things all rolled into one. It's actually a local homegrown El Salvadoran company that's grown throughout the region. They were acquired by a much larger company in Germany last year, and we've got a deal, with Hugo to be our first API partner where, as I mentioned, within the existing Hugo super app, people will, starting early next year, be able to complete their transactions using Bitcoin instead of dollars, if they so choose, and that will be enabled by our API. And, Hugo has 1.3 monthly active customers, right? So that's a huge opportunity for us to generate revenue, not only with Hugo, but with other multinational companies who will be signing up to also use the API.
Okay, and just to reiterate what you said, Hugo is massive. I actually was lucky enough to invest in them personally in their very first few rounds, small checks from the Piker portfolio. And I've been keeping an eye on that company. So when I heard about your partnership with them, I was well aware of this company, and they're making acquisitions in a lot of the other countries in which you plan to expand to as well. Okay, so that was the question about Hugo. Okay, and the dovetail was, any other large partnerships or plans that can be disclosed at this time? That's probably a no, but I'll throw it to you.
Yeah, I mean, we've got, a number of other prominent companies that were close to signing up for the API as well. Probably the second out of the chute will be one of the largest telecom operators in the world, who's a Latin American-based company, right? And so prefer not to disclose the name until we actually have the contract signed. But, they want us to enable something similar to what we're enabling in the Hugo Super app, and, allow their clients in many different countries to, for example, top up airtime minutes and do it with sats instead of with dollars. And we've got, a number of other conversations with other, prominent multinational companies already underway. And so, the interesting thing is our challenge is not, establishing relationships and landing these deals. Quite honestly, just to be candid with the audience, the bigger challenge is just, putting the technical pieces in place to deliver on these promises as we head into Q1 and Q2 of next year, which obviously, we're heavily dependent upon our partnership with Galoy in order to deliver on those promises.
So this would probably be a good time to get to the question of does Galoy control Bitcoin Beach Wallet or have a controlling interest, or is it completely run independently of Galoy? And has this relationship changed at all since we invested last year?
Sure, all great questions. So the relationship certainly evolved, right? So as we talked about before, the Bitcoin Beach Wallet was a proof of concept that was incubated within Galoy, and we spun it out a year ago. From a legal perspective, BBW is its own corporation, right? It's a US C corp that owns the El Salvador operating business, and it's completely, from a legal perspective, arm's length from Galoy. That being said, Galoy is the largest shareholder within the company, right? So that's something to be aware of. That being said, Galoy does not control the company, but given the history and also just the technical dependency that we have and working with Galoy, there's a very close symbiotic relationship, right? And the teams are in constant communication, right? We use Mattermost, which is just an encrypted version, more secure version of Slack, where we use that for all the team communications, right? I mean, various members of both teams are communicating regularly on a daily basis. We have a weekly standing call between both companies where everybody joins in together. And so, there's a tremendous amount of communication and flow where, it's almost seamless to the point where it might seem like there's still one organization, even though both legally and operationally, there's, pretty clear delineation and separation of roles and responsibilities.
Okay. I want to spend a minute on this Galoy relationship because we've had a ton of questions. Personally, people don't seem to be able to comprehend this, right? And I don't know how much you can say or all of that, but if you're bullish on Galoy, you inherently really should be bullish on Badge, right? Because this is the flagship product, okay, of Galoy. This is their baby. Like all interests are aligned. I don't know if I'm over-speaking there. I mean, that's kind of the reality, right?
Sure. I mean, both platforms, both companies are tremendously exciting, right? So, Galoy, our vision there is to be, the world's number one, Bitcoin banking software provider, right? So said differently, Galoy does not want to be a bank, right? We created a proof of concept bank in El Salvador to prove to the world that this stuff works. And that bank, now called Badge, is a client of Galoy, right? And so, Galoy will support many other clients around the world, whether companies or governments or communities, and should be a very successful enterprise unto itself. But what Badge is doing is it's where the rubber meets the road. It provides a real operational solution for everyday people and everyday businesses to actually use the software that Galoy has created.
So the main focus, right? The main customer,
Oh, for
the
sure.
main proof of concept.
On that point, just to be perfectly clear, Badge is by far the most prominent, the most important, the most successful client that Galoy has. And so obviously Galoy has a vested interest to continue to support Badge in every way possible to make sure it continues to succeed.
Okay, so this one's a bit of a personal one. Do with it what you will, but what happened with Hunter's role at Galoy?
Sure. So, I was co-founder of Galoy, president. I stepped down from that role in April of this year. So Nicholas, who's CEO and co-founder of Galoy, is running the ship there. And I stepped back from the operational role at Galoy in order to focus on Badge and, build up the team, professionalize what we're doing. And so, for the last 8 months, I've been much more focused on Badge day to day as I stepped down from my role at Galoy.
Okay, and that's really cool because Chris was the interim CEO when we first did this video last year, and now we could remove that interim title. So I had a chance to meet a lot of the fantastic team out there in El Salvador recently. Do you want to give a quick little overview here on maybe anyone who might be missing, or if you want to just touch on some of your all-stars that are currently on the team?
Sure, I won't go through everybody, but most prominently featured here alongside me is Manuel. Manuel, is a native Salvadorian, who's had a very successful career. He spent 10 years at Tigo. Tigo is one of the largest mobile telecom operators in country, and he helped, grow from scratch and run Tigo Money, which was their mobile payments platform. So he has, a fantastic experience set in terms of just understanding and creating a new financial services product, that people use on their mobile phone in country. He's got lots of great relationships in both the business community and the government community, and the banking community that have been very valuable for us. So he's a real asset. Daniela, who leads our operations, she's a true gem. She spent many years. Everybody here that you see is a native Salvadorian, but she spent many years in Switzerland and Europe working, and she leads all of our operations and has implemented already what I would characterize as a world-class system for customer service, right? So we've got an omni-channel solution with Fresh Desk where people can communicate with us by email, by phone, by WhatsApp, which is typically the way that people prefer to communicate, right? And we've got a ticketing system where we have very specific SLA times, service level agreement times where we want to respond to certain types of inquiries within a certain period of time. And Danielle's been leading the charge and putting all those processes in place. Ricardo is another fantastic talent. He leads all of our sales efforts. He's grown up in his career through, world-class sales organizations like 3M. He's worked in the US and Mexico and all around the world. And, he's a true Bitcoiner. He was hanging out in El Zante and very keen on the Bitcoin Beach project in 2019, well before even Galoy showed up in country, right? So he's a hardcore Bitcoiner, has a true passion for this stuff. He's the one, meeting with all the merchants, whether, it's a local tienda all the way up through, the Hugos and the different multinational customers we're working with. And he's a gem of a human being and a real asset for the business as well. So that gives people a little bit of flavor of some of the people we've brought on board.
Okay, great. So I'm almost done here. I just have like two other things that I want to just hit home on. We don't go into numbers or anything like that. But Bitcoin Beach Wallet has real revenue. Okay, this is a real product with users in the multiple tens of thousands. Okay, this is a real product. This is not something that is built, right? We see, we talk a lot about angel investing and other things that you look for. This is a very real, captive, enthusiastic audience that is already using this. Okay, this is a real product with real revenue, and the projections, okay, which they are just projections, but the projections for next year, El Salvador alone, 2024, El Salvador alone, are very, very impressive. Okay. And the 2022 actuals are impressive because they are real. This company makes real money. That's without the bill pay. That's without the API. That's without this large partnership that's about to be rolled out, right? That's free merchant tools. Okay. That's right now. That's real. That's every day. Okay. So if you do see some of these projections and are in our reading our deal memo, that's really impressive. Okay. And that doesn't even go into the other expansions in Honduras and Guatemala and all of this, right? So this is a real company. It's a large opportunity, okay, with lofty goals. Okay, once again, the #1 bank in El Salvador. Okay, that is what Chris Hunter is setting out to do here. And more broadly, the #1 Bitcoin bank in Latin America, which is super cool. So I just want to close it out on one more question as far as competitors. It's a lot of fragmentation with a lot of these things, right? Maybe there's one kind of merchant tool, but they don't do other things. Maybe there's legacy banks that are operating there that don't even know what Bitcoin is. If you had to really just nail down a few competitors, is someone like Ibex a competitor? in a different way. You know, it's very fragmented. Do you want to just touch on the competitive landscape?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple easy bits here. One is, what we're providing is a solution set that I think that's a little bit more broad than any of the competitive names might be providing, right? I mean, I've got a lot of respect for some of the companies I'll name, but each of them is providing something that's a bit more narrow. So you mentioned IBEX or somebody like an OpenNode, great companies who have a nice product that are focused on a merchant solution, right? Which we provide, right? But we provide something much broader than that. Then you've got companies like, say, a Paxful or a Strike, who are more retail, consumer focused, but they don't provide some of the merchant solutions or API solutions that we're offering as well, right? And so, you know, I'm not particularly concerned about the competitive landscape. I mean, the reality is a lot of the companies I've just named are actually retreating from the market in El Salvador, right? They've reduced their staff dramatically. A couple of the names that I just mentioned have effectively retreated from the market altogether, which touches on, an earlier point where, the everyday person in El Salvador is not using Bitcoin just because it became legal tender, right? The people are only going to use it if there's a solution that makes their life better. It's the same for anybody listening here, right? You're not going to use a product unless, it enhances your life in some way. And so that's where we have a real advantage, right? We're a homegrown business, right? That started as a grassroots movement, and we're providing a real solution, which is why we have more than 100,000 downloads, which is why we have tens of thousands of monthly active users without even really kind of tending to the garden, right? Now we've put the team in place. We've started marketing efforts. We're putting in place new products and features that we're introducing over the coming months. And, the sky's the limit, both in terms of how many people we can get on the platform, as well as generating new revenue, as you alluded to a moment ago.
All right, very cool. And I think that does it. That's pretty much everything here. And we're excited to be participating again and have our wagon hitched to your star. So thanks for taking some time this morning to sit down and chat.
Thank you, sir. Always good to be with you.
All right, peace.